listening to the Decarbonisation Dialogue, a podcast from Salix.
Welcome to Delivering on Climate Change, our collective challenge. Welcome to the Decarbonisation Dialogue. I am Hannah Walker, and I believe that the best way to communicate a message is by being passionate about what you are talking about. Welcome to Asif Ghafoor. Asif is a born business innovator. He completed his degree in business studies in 1992 at the University of Bradford, and I believe continues to support the university as a donor to the Bradford Futures Fund, supporting students' challenges in assessing and remaining in higher education. Following his time at university, Asif has held many senior roles, including managing director for Amy Investments and non-executive director at Wandel. He is currently the CEO of Be.EV, the largest electrical vehicle charging network across Greater Manchester, and co-founder of Iduna, which develops new infrastructure in the mobility, telecommunications and energy sectors. So welcome to Asif.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your time today. Can we start by talking a little bit about your career and what shapes your vision? What motivates you? I know at university, I think you've been quoted as saying you weren't too sure what you were going to do or where you were going to and who you were going to become. And I know you sought internships, and I think you had a very pivotal and fundamental moment when you had an internship with Midland Bank, which is, of course, now HSBC, which I think you've said changed your life, and you remained in banking for 5 years. But tell us in your own words, how did you get started and what motivates you?
So I think for me, the excitement is normally led by quite interesting challenges. And having done the internship, which you refer to, one of the final year projects was to focus on a company or institution and make some sort of forward predictions. And whether I had the glass ball to look into, but my prediction was Midland Bank would no longer exist on its own, and it would be subsumed into much larger international operations. And convenient for me, in my final year, that's what happened. So I'd actually submitted my paper, and then that happened, and then I got quite good high marks for that, which was quite great. But in terms of opportunities, I look at all of the various roles I've done and the areas where I've focused. It's always been about building something new and trying to lean into future development. So in Amy, one of the big problems the UK has and still has today is what you do with waste. Household waste, commercial waste. So in Amy, as part of the team who helped build out the strategy and then build out the business to look at how you solve that problem, building waste facilities all the way through to how you sort out collections at home and so on. Actually, if I fast forward to 2015, 16, I got very interested in how technology and the shift in energy is going to make a massive difference to the way we move from A to B, because for the last 50, 60 years, nothing's really evolved. It's always been the same. And this was a pivotal moment, which I thought, and pivotal moments and disruption create opportunity, and this created opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And indeed, when I research you and look at your work, I do read the word disruption and disruptor quite a lot. So I know that's going to be a bit of a theme, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But from your experience across mobility and energy, what do you see as the biggest opportunities right now for businesses to contribute to net zero?
Interestingly, I've been trying to ban the word net zero. That's probably a good starting point, because the opportunity of mobility isn't necessarily always linked to net zero. It's actually linked to the future technology and the way things are developing, whether it's AI or whether it's autonomous vehicles or whether it's any combination around the way we move from A to B. So I got quite interested in 2015 thinking autonomous vehicles are coming. Let's get ourselves ready. This is a great business opportunity. Probably slightly too early. And then you kind of roll back a bit and go, actually, if you break that down, the various pieces which could be interesting was putting telecommunications on highways from A to B, all the way through to electric vehicle charging. And each of these are new sectors And the element of disruption is they're crossing boundaries. So telecommunications was traditionally in a very straight line, highway management in a straight line, car production and the OEMs in a very straight line. And what we're finding now, if you look at the car manufacturers, they've slightly lost control of this market because they haven't got control of any of the key points apart from the metal bashing at the front, which is producing the vehicle. That disruption is how I perceive the opportunity. And it's a good example of how this change of technology rather than net zero is what's driving these massive opportunities here.
And in terms of business, there's the opportunity, there's the sustainability, and you've seen success and you've developed success, but sustainability and commercial success, are they, in your experience of planning your own businesses, are they compatible, sustainability then, and being a commercial success?
I think compatibility is done by your inner core to an extent here. It's what you start off believing is the right thing to be doing. So you have to be blind to not see the damage we're doing to our environment and the damage we're going to leave to future generations if we don't change the way we operate. You talk to people about the 50s and the peace fog in London. You know, people then, they brought in legislation, they brought in change in how people heated their homes. This is just a continuation of this story. If you set your business compass correctly and establish some core basic principles, which are about building something which is fair. We have when we set out to build the Be.EV, one of the first things we set out was we want to have an employee-owned business. And in that environment, that became a core principle. By the very nature, I always say to the team, let's not sing about the fact that it's sustainable because we're in EV. It's what else can we do? So when we built our forecourt model, which is our Manchester charging oasis, we thought about the individual steps we could do to make that actually become part of your business compass. So planting, drainage, reuse of water, the materials used on site, the ongoing sustainability of that as well over the next 20 years, and how we can actually manage that and create a positive outcome, plus also involve the community. We didn't go into that project and just ignore the neighbours. We actually brought them in. We brought the councillors in. We invited people to events. All of the things which we weren't required to do from a planning perspective, we did because, again, from a business compass, sustainability and getting people involved. People are interested. There's ways of getting that kind of engagement and really creating that business compass and setting it right.
And that's really interesting that you say that. So talking about electric cars, most specifically in that kind of disruption, does it mean, and the project you've just alluded to, does it mean that we are facing a future without I suppose the petrol stations, if you like, that we're so used to seeing along our high street or on the motorway? I mean, it's a completely different idea of how that looks, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like asking someone in 1900, where are you going to be taking this thing called a motor vehicle? Are you going to take it to a barn to go and refuel? The answer was no, because there's no logic in that going forward. So this disruption creates a massive opportunity to create something different and an experience which is different. So people still think about traveling from A to B long distances. I have to stop on a motorway services. I watched really boring documentaries. I watched a documentary about the first motorways and motorway services on BBC4. Fascinating. But actually people, go in there to have a day out and have lunch and dinner and watch the odd car go past on the M1. That was exciting then. But now there's never going to be enough space and enough power for that model to work going forward. So what's the next model? The next model is at every junction, we have a coffee stop or a food stop or a shopping stop, and people are able to charge, and it kind of fits in around what they're doing on that journey at the point when they need to go to the loo or grab a coffee or change a nappy or walk the dog and so on. So there are rare times in your life where you're able to actually create something which is going to have 100-year life going forward, or a 50-year life going forward. And that's where we are. Honestly, that's where I believe we are sitting today. And that responsibility, which is why I go back to that business compass of setting that right and thinking about it in the right way, because it's going to have an impact not just on what we do as a business, but also guide this sector and guide this market and how it kind of builds out in the UK and maybe elsewhere in the world.
I hear a lot from people worried about, and we will talk about obviously Greater Manchester and the work going on there, but hear a lot of people who are worried about that, the buying or acquiring an electric vehicle because of that lack of charging infrastructure and making that long journey on the motorway, wherever they might be going, and worrying about will they be able to charge, and or will there be a big queue, and will it take me longer to charge? And then you started talking about hundreds of years ago when people might sit and watch cars, which gets me thinking about, which takes me into another whole realm of transport, being in the airport. And my father was saying to me, I just go to sometimes I've gone to the airport arrivals just to watch the people arrive and meet their family and friends. So that's got me thinking about something else altogether. But going back to, because it is a wonderful place to be, the arrivals at the airport. And I get it. I completely get that. So can we talk a moment about your work for transport for Greater Manchester, how you see the electric vehicle charging infrastructure evolving to support where we're going on this journey in Manchester?
Yeah, so we started off life in Greater Manchester. That was our first contract, working with Transport for Greater Manchester, and we actually upgraded their network. They received central government funding, so we upgraded the network, and then now we manage that. And then over time, we've added extra bits on, so taxi charging, car clubs have been added on, and there's been some expansion and change in the existing network as well. The idea, which, and I'm not just saying this because they were our first customer, but I love our customer in Greater Manchester because they had a very clear idea, a clear strategy, and also knew what their role was. And they were therefore very clear to me what my role was. And my role was, you go out, you're good at building networks, running networks, and getting high performance and getting customer engagement. And their role was to set the policy, set the strategy, and then create space for that to actually happen and give guidance and support. And so that whole contract is a contract not just between us and the public authority. You've got the 10 local authorities thrown in. But for me, it's with the residents of Greater Manchester. Because how do you create that change? And how do you create an environment where, they were one of the early adopters as a region? I started off looking at Greater Manchester like a country in itself and saying we've got nearly 3.5-4 million people. How do you get them engaged? Plus you got nearly 500,000 to 1 million visitors coming in on a regular basis. We talk about reducing car usage on the road. Unfortunately, the network of public services isn't great, and it's going to take a while. So we need that alternative. And that alternative can be something which people can really get engaged with. We knew that the government funding had limitations. So we then worked with Trafford Council, Stockport Council, and we followed Noah's Ark principle, which was we took a ward and we worked out a distance of where we should at least try and get minimum number of charges in to be a minimum, hence the Noah's Ark element, but try and see if we can put more in that particular location, and then work your way through all of the borough and make sure you've got a nice spread of rapid, ultra rapid, and AC charging. So for the various dwell behavior and activity, we had long conversations. Shall we add in overstay charges? I'm like, no, this is bonkers. This is the stage where we really want people to get engaged and get quite excited. So instead, we did launches, which were, if you know the weather of Manchester, I remember one launch in Trafford where when I got on the train to come home, I literally was taking water out of my shoe. It was that wet that particular day. Well, we did launches, we created noise, we got people engaged, we did free charging days. where people could come and charge for free and try it out. We went and stood in car parks and showed people how to do this. It was really a great way of gave us loads of experience, loads of understanding, but fundamentally really turned our focus from coming from an infrastructure space, really to recognize this is all about customer and customer behavior. And if you get that right, we're a winner, and the regions we're in will be massive winners. And if we get that wrong, everyone's a loser, and this is not going to work. And so that really creates that shift in the way we were thinking about this, which is why now, if you ask me, what's my focus? I may have come from infrastructure, but I'm 100% want to be the number one charge point operator in the UK from a customer perspective. That's my real target and goal as a business.
And when you go into the community, because you've mentioned community a few times now, and the customer, obviously customer is key, is business, but you're going into the community, and a lot of those people might not ever become customers, but what are you hearing from them when you've been out on the ground? What do you hear from people about this change in infrastructure and this disruption?
I have spent a lot of time in car parks, just lurking around. I make so in our team culture is everybody who joins early doors. You go to a site, you go and charge. Some people we film what they're doing to just observe what doesn't work and works. And then on a regular basis, we have something called customer squads, people around talking to customers. We go to our sites, we go to our competitors' sites, but we're just trying to learn and understand. And what we really hear is changing. The conversation number one was a very forgiving customer base. You know, if that didn't work, oh, why didn't that work? And lots of conversation about why it didn't work. The next wave of customers, and we are getting into early mass adoption stage now, that customer isn't forgiving, because why should they be? When you buy a mobile phone and you use your mobile phone and the app doesn't work. You don't say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's a new sector, therefore I'll be forgiving. You're actually quite angry or quite upset. And to actually make the customer experience the best, you really got to be in the weeds with the customer and try and solve every driver's experience and try and get it to exceptional. Because it isn't exceptional today. Nobody is delivering exceptional. And we'll include ourselves in that. But that's our goal here.
And going back to that technology, and it's not just the charging infrastructure, it's not just the technology you're working with, but people in general, we love technology, anything that moves us forward. But there's a lot of technology out there that doesn't work, as you say, as well as it could. And some things they break, they don't get fixed, or we're finding workarounds. So is that an issue for your business on a practical basis, or that kind of technology that doesn't quite work?
What I worry about is water tanking on the parking space. So when a driver gets out, you're soaked and your feet are soaked. I worry about the signage. We've gone through every single step of what that the physical customer journey is, and looked at what do we need to change and how do we need to adopt that. We're now moving on to the next step, which is wayfinding. So we're spending quite a bit of time talking and discussing and agreeing what is it, and talking to customers and actually asking, what is it you want on wayfinding, whether it's wayfinding to the site or on site. We're also looking to roll out, hopefully on some sites, totems. We've done the big one on Manchester Charging Oasis. Customers love it because it just tells you something really basic called the price. No one knows what they're paying. And it tells you that very clearly. And then there's a whole digital discovery piece, which we're continually testing. What we're finding now isn't those brilliant basics aren't set. I think we've got a nice line where we actually are achieving. What we're now finding is things which you haven't really thought about go wrong. Last week we had an outage, which was a rolling outage for 8 hours. What was that down to? Because the SIMs in the certain type of chargers had an update from the SIM service provider. I didn't even think that would be a problem. Who come up with that as a problem? But it suddenly became my problem and my net. And we were like, "What's going on?" And trying to solve it. So we have solved it. We put in 2 SIMs now in every charger. But this is the bit now where we're kind of working our way through to get to exceptional. For me, exceptional is a driver goes to a charger, first time they try and pay, first time they try and connect, seamless, and actually it's so unmemorable as an activity that they remember the coffee or the burger or the shopping.
Yes.
They don't remember the charging.
The experience of that charging. Now, there's a huge amount of lessons there, isn't there, for other businesses, and not just not just the transport business. But there's a lot of brilliant basics there that could be applied, particularly when you talk about the customer and the customer's account and going through that whole journey with them. What lessons from your experience with Be.EV could be applied to other sectors? And dare I mention, particularly when aiming for net zero?
Well, I think the first thing is I think unfortunately, whether we like it or not, people are being turned off by the word net zero.
Yes.
So that's why I've kind of not really used it, because it is, when I buy a vehicle, whether I bought a vehicle 20 years ago or a year ago, I buy it because I think I'm going to look good in it, and it's going to get me from A to B, and it gives me some happiness for all the hard work you've done, and so on and so on. I think a lot of people, and as a byproduct, I'm buying electric because I believe in the challenge we've got in the environment. And so it's important. That's why I think there's so many other things which kind of get you to that point before you start worrying about the net zero piece. But from a customer perspective, I think we look at other sectors ourselves. Yeah. So we're looking, McDonald's I've used McDonald's as an example with my team. The McDonald's experience is now you go in, you touch a screen, you go to the counter, you get your bag of food, and you stuff your face, and you do that in 3 minutes. And it's a very seamless process of getting and eating the end activity there, which is the quality of the food, which is hot, which is being delivered well. For me, that customer experience, we're still on this journey. I still don't think I've been able to define 100% where I want to get to, but I'm not worried about that, because if you remember when a Nokia phone came out, we all got very excited by the snake game. And we look back on it now and think, my gosh, that was so basic to where we've got the phones to today. But at that point, I achieved customer satisfaction. And much in the world now, if I can get all the basics right and get to that basic a first-time charge experience, and as people can find my sites, I've got to my snake game. But I also need to have an eye on that actually I'm going to ultimately end up with an app at some point here as well.
So it's always looking, isn't it? It's always looking for the next advancement, how you can make it better for everybody. And obviously, when you were buying a car, you look for obviously something that is you're going to feel good about, but obviously that also is kinder, I suppose, to our planet. Now, I always ask this question to guests because we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about success and driving things forward. But what does sustainable look like for you in your own lifestyle? I think you say you obviously drive an electric car, but tell us a little bit about your own green, if you like, habits, and how do you maintain a sustainable lifestyle?
Oh, I've got a big confession to make. I don't drive a car.
Okay. Wow.
I ride a bike. I go on the bus. I go on the train, and I borrow my mum's electric car.
Okay.
So it's quite, because our head office is in Manchester. So when I'm up in Manchester, I stay with my mum.
Yes.
So it's gone all the way back to being 18, 19. I'm like, Mum, can I borrow the car tomorrow? I need to go to ABC. And if not, I hire an electric car if I can't do that, because we're quite close to the airport. But no, your life choices around sustainability have to be also replicated in your work choices here, 100%. I think for me, it's about sustainability. It's also about the community piece. The two go hand in hand, because it's no use me being an island on my own, being sustainable, if we're not really able to take whether it's with working with my neighbours. I do quite a lot of stuff on my street with the neighbours, and which is quite unusual living in London because you normally don't know your neighbours. But in the work environment, I will, I'll go back to the employee-owned element. Mm-hmm. The employee-owned element the idea was very simple, that hopefully one day this business will be successful. And it won't be the two co-founders who drove that. It's everybody who's done blood, sweat, tears to get to that point, and therefore trying to create a degree of sustainability in their lives going forward, but at the same time pushing them and giving them opportunity to be able to grow, which is as important. But in daily life, I kind of live a very non-preachy, basic. I'm so busy. I think I'm so busy with work. I can't really judge what else I'm doing.
I think that's the key, is not to be too preachy about it, as many people do tell us. And it's obviously very important to you to give back, because you support Bradford. You support the Bradford Futures Fund for students who might be struggling, and you've talked about a community, you've talked about your neighbours. So that's obviously very important for you and the way you move forward in your own life and your career and your business. So it is the success, but making it a success, as you say, for everybody. You might be leading it, but it is a success that everybody can have a share of. That seems exceptionally valid. But what do you think next for you? Because we've talked about Be.EV and for your career. What are the next steps?
I think just touching on the point there you make, I think one of the things which are really important to me is, and you've seen this recently in the UK, and we've seen this around the world, if you just take a very one-dimensional view of yourself, you're going to end up with events like Brexit, and I'm not going on either side, but the shock of those events, or the shock of other events similar to that, which have kind of gone, oh my God, where did that come from? A Trump coming in, or an extreme of what was normal in a very centre world, because people are not thinking in the broader sense of taking people with you on that journey, and that's important to me. So even as this step, oh my God, I've got so much more to do in this step of the business that I always say I'm probably the worst person to be involved in something which is pretty normal. I get really bored and quite annoying. And even when I left Amy, I had some time out for 6 months as part of the normal gardening period and so on. Day one, I looked out the window and I was like, God, there's a car moved. Those people are going to school. Day two, intervention from family and friends was just, you're going to go mad. You need to do something. So I've been like Reginald Perrin was it? I can't remember who it was now. I put on my suit. That's right. Off I went to go and just have coffees and lunches and talk about the next thing, which is kind of where this started from. Yes. And so I spent 6 months just talking to people about the next thing, about I could do this looks interesting, what do you think about this, and so on. But for me, the opportunity here is we are really at the beginning. And the beginning is, for our business, we've been very focused on being a public charge point operator in Great Britain. That's kind of our model. But actually within that, to get to that exceptional customer experience with a network which continues to grow and a market which will consolidate. So at
the beginning, which is a very exciting place to be. So we're certainly going to keep our eyes on you. But and I love that it's so important to take people with you. Because that's what we're hoping to achieve here too. So thank you to Asif Ghafoor today for providing such insight. There can be no doubt that climate change is the biggest challenge of our time. Today, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions to slow global warming. Today, we must act for tomorrow, adjusting our lifestyles to current and future impacts of climate change. Today, we must use our collective wisdom to deliver on our climate commitments. Today, we work for tomorrow's world. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channels and tell us what you think by emailing us at podcast@salixfinance.uk. Thank you once again to Asif for joining me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Decarbonisation Dialogue, a podcast from Salix. For more information about our work and to find more content, please visit salixfinance.co.uk/podcasts.